The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of Willow Creek Station, dust rising into the golden September air of 1873. Carrick Montgomery stood waiting on the wooden platform, his weathered hat pulled low over his eyes, his heart beating harder than he would ever admit. He had faced blizzards, wild cattle, and years of loneliness on the Wyoming Prairie. None of that made his hands shake the way this moment did. After 5 years of building his ranch alone, today he would meet the woman who had agreed to become his wife. The coach door creaked open. A small, gloved hand appeared first, then the hem of a dusty blue dress. When she stepped down, she did not look around in wonder. She did not smile. She was crying. Tears streaked down her pale face. Her blue eyes were red and swollen, her shoulders trembling beneath her heavy cloak. So she clutched a small valise to her chest as if it were the only thing holding her together. Carrick felt something twist in his chest. This was not how he imagined his mail-order bride would arrive. He stepped forward and removed his hat. "I'm Carrick Montgomery," he said gently. She nodded once. "Miss Amelia Foster." Her voice broke. People around them watched. The driver muttered something about a long journey from Cheyenne, but Carrick barely heard it. All he could see was the fear and shame in the young woman's eyes. He guided her toward a bench at the end of the platform, away from curious stares. She tried to wipe her tears with a damp handkerchief, but more kept falling. Carrick reached into his pocket and handed her a clean one. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said quietly. "If something's wrong, well, you can say it." Her eyes lifted slowly, surprised. "I fear I have made a terrible mistake," she whispered. Carrick's jaw tightened. He had heard stories of brides changing their minds the moment they saw the man waiting for them. He was 31, broad-shouldered, sun-worn, not refined, not polished like a Boston gentleman. "Is it me?" he asked plainly. "No," she said quickly, almost shocked. "It is not you." She glanced around nervously. "May we speak somewhere private?" He nodded at once. Minutes later, they were riding in his wagon toward his ranch 4 miles outside town. The prairie stretched wide and endless around them. Amelia sat stiffly beside him, clutching her bag as if it might vanish. "I lied to you," she said suddenly. Carrick kept his eyes on the road. "About what?" "In my letters. I told you I left my teaching position voluntarily." Her fingers twisted the cloth in her lap. "That was not true." The wagon rolled over a rut. He steadied her with one hand. "The headmaster's son spread lies about me when I refused him. They believed him. My reputation was ruined." Her voice trembled, but did not break this time. "No school would hire me. My own family cared more about gossip than truth. I answered your advertisement because I had nowhere left to stand." Silence filled the wagon. Carrick felt anger rise inside him, not toward her, but toward the men who had wronged her. They crested a hill, and his ranch came into view. A modest 2-story house, a barn, corrals, cattle grazing in the distance. "I understand if you wish to send me back," she said softly. "Jube, you asked for honesty and respect. I bring scandal." Carrick slowed the horses. "Miss Foster," he said firmly, "out here, a person is judged by what they do, not by rumors carried on city wind." He gestured toward the land. "I built this with my own hands. I sent for a wife because I was tired of doing it alone. I don't need perfection. I need truth." He looked at her fully now. "Do you want a real partnership? Do you want to build something honest with me?" Amelia met his gaze. Tears still shimmered in her eyes, but there was steel beneath them. "Yes." They reached the house. A golden dog rushed toward them, tail wagging wildly. "That's Rusty," Carrick said. "He approves of most good people. Amelia bent carefully and let the dog sniff her hand. Rusty wagged harder. Carrick helped her down from the wagon. Yet her hand felt small in his. Fragile, but not weak. Inside, she removed her bonnet. Honey blonde hair fell neatly pinned. Her face, though tear-stained, was intelligent and steady. "It's not fancy," Carrick said of the house. "It feels peaceful," she replied. He showed her the upstairs bedroom he had prepared. Fresh quilt, clean curtains, wildflowers in a small vase. "We are not married yet," he added carefully. "The preacher comes Sunday. Until then, you will have your own room." Relief passed over her face like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery." That evening she cooked supper. They ate in quiet conversation. He spoke of cattle and seasons. She spoke of children she once taught. Later, as he stepped outside to tend evening chores, he paused at the door. Whatever happened in Boston stays there," he told her. "Out here, you choose who you are." For the first time since stepping off that coach, Amelia truly smiled. But as Carrick walked toward the barn, he could not silence one thought in his mind. Had he just welcomed trouble into his life? Or had he just welcomed something far greater? Amelia stood in the kitchen long after Carrick stepped outside. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the small clock on the wall and the faint sound of wind moving through the grass outside. She placed both hands on the table to steady herself. 3 days ago, she had believed her life was over. Now she stood in a Wyoming ranch house belonging to a man who had offered her dignity instead of doubt. She moved slowly through the kitchen, studying everything. The shelves were neat, yet the pots were clean. The stove was blackened from use but cared for. This was not the careless home of a rough bachelor. It was the home of a man who valued order and effort. She washed her face at the pump and stared at her reflection in the small metal mirror. Her eyes were still red, but there was something else there now. Hope. When Carrick returned that evening, he found the table set and supper ready. They ate quietly at first, but the silence felt less sharp than before. He told her about the ranch, about the 60 head of cattle, about his plans to expand slowly without falling into debt. She listened carefully, not politely, not nervously, carefully. After supper, he brought out a folded paper and placed it in front of her. "If we marry," he said evenly, "half of everything becomes yours." Amelia blinked at him, and the deed had a blank space beside his name. "I had the lawyer prepare it," he continued. "I want a partner, not someone who works without share." She stared at the document. In Boston, a married woman owned nothing. Everything belonged to her husband. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "Because ranching is hard," he answered. "And if someone is going to face it beside me, she deserves equal ground." That night, Amelia lay awake staring at the ceiling. She had expected survival. She had not expected respect. The next morning, sunlight streamed through her window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she heard a dog bark below and remembered. She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs. Carrick was gone, but a note rested on the table. Gone to check north pasture. Coffee on stove. Rest well. The simple kindness warmed her more than the coffee. She stepped onto the porch and saw the ranch in full daylight. Rolling grasslands, barn, smokehouse, chickens moving in the yard. It was not Boston. It was not grand. But it was honest. She rolled up her sleeves and began cleaning, not because it was expected, but because she wanted to belong to it. When Carrick returned mid-morning, he paused in the doorway. The house gleamed. "You've been busy," he said. "I hope you don't mind." He shook his head slowly. Mind? It looks better than it has in years. They walked the property together after breakfast. He showed her the spring that never ran dry, the cattle, the half-built smokehouse. He spoke with quiet pride, and Amelia realized the ranch was not just land to him. It was his second chance. Call me Amelia, she said suddenly as they walked. He smiled faintly. Then you call me Carrick. That afternoon, a storm rolled in, forcing them indoors. Rain beat against the windows while lightning flashed across the prairie. They sat near the fire. Amelia told him about her students, about little boys who struggled with reading, about girls who dreamed bigger than their families allowed. You miss teaching, he observed. I do. He stared into the flames. Willow Creek is growing. They'll need a school soon. She looked at him sharply. You would not mind if your wife worked? He shrugged. If it brings you purpose, I see no harm. Something settled in her heart at that moment. By Saturday, her wedding dress arrived. Simple, blue, beautiful. Sunday morning came clear and calm. Just the small church filled with townspeople who welcomed her warmly. She had expected whispers. Instead, she received smiles. Carrick stood beside her in a dark suit, nervous but steady. When the preacher spoke the vows, Amelia felt no fear. When Carrick slid the ring onto her finger, his hands trembled only slightly. You may kiss your bride, the preacher announced. Carrick looked at her first, asking without words. She nodded. The kiss was gentle and brief, but something passed between them. Not passion. Not yet. Trust. After dinner at the Brennans, after laughter and congratulations, they returned to the ranch as husband and wife. Carrick carried her over the threshold in traditional fashion, setting her gently on her feet inside the house that was now theirs. Amelia, he began carefully, I do not expect anything tonight that you are not ready to give. She touched his hand. I know. Later, in the quiet of their bedroom, they came together slowly and tenderly. There was no rush, no force, only patience and quiet discovery. When it was over, Amelia lay against his chest and listened to his steady heartbeat. Happy? He asked softly. Yes, she whispered, and for the first time in months, she meant it. Weeks passed, and a rhythm formed. She learned to churn butter and feed chickens. He listened to her stories from Boston. They read books by the fire. They laughed more often. The town approved funding for a schoolhouse. They asked Amelia to teach. She looked to Carrick for hesitation. He only nodded. If that is what you want. Pride filled his voice. By autumn, she was teaching 3 days a week. But the children adored her. The townspeople respected her. One evening, as snow dusted the distant mountains, Amelia sat by the fire, studying Carrick's face in the glow. I love you, she said suddenly. The words surprised them both. Carrick went still. Are you certain? He asked. Yes. He pulled her into his arms. I have loved you since the day you told me the truth, he confessed quietly. I just feared naming it. They held each other while the wind moved outside. Neither of them had planned for love, but it had found them anyway. Winter settled over the Wyoming Prairie with long white nights and quiet mornings wrapped in frost. Snow drifted against the barn doors, and smoke curled steady from the stone chimney of the Montgomery house. Inside, the fire burned bright, and life moved forward in a rhythm that felt both new and certain. Amelia's days were divided between the ranch and the small schoolroom in town. 3 mornings a week, she rode into Willow Creek, her skirts tucked carefully as she guided Daisy down the frozen road. 15 children waited for her inside the converted storefront that served as their school. She taught them letters, sums, and stories of distant places. She taught them to think for themselves. Each evening, Carrick either met her halfway or waited on the porch, watching the horizon until she appeared. He never said he worried, but she knew he did. Wyoming winters were not gentle. February brought a fierce blizzard that trapped them on the ranch for 5 days. Wind howled across the plains like something alive. But they tied ropes between the house and barn so they would not lose their way in the whiteout. During those days, they spoke of things they had never said aloud before. Carrick told her about the war, about the man he had been before, and the silence he carried afterward. Amelia listened without judgment. She told him about the pressure of Boston society, about how her family valued appearance more than truth. When the storm finally cleared, the sky shone sharp and blue. The world felt scrubbed clean. In early April, as the last snow melted into the creek, Amelia stood beside Carrick near the fence line. She had been quiet all morning, one hand resting lightly against her stomach. "Carrick," she said softly. He turned at once, concern flashing across his face. "What is it?" She took his hand and placed it gently over her belly. "We are going to have a baby." For a heartbeat, he did not move. Then his expression changed. Wonder replaced worry. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "A baby?" he asked, voice rough. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. But these were not tears of fear. Carrick lifted her carefully, as if she were something precious beyond measure, and held her close. "I never thought," he began, then stopped. "I never thought I could be this happy again." Word spread quickly through Willow Creek. Martha Brennan promised blankets. Beatrice Wilson spoke of sewing tiny gowns. Even the ranch hands clapped Carrick on the back with grins. Carrick became even more protective. He insisted Amelia ride only when necessary. He hired extra help for the heavier ranch work. He watched her closely for signs of exhaustion. I am not fragile," she reminded him more than once. "I know," he answered every time. "But I like taking care of you." Summer came bright and busy. The cattle thrived. The schoolhouse foundation was laid. Amelia's belly grew round, and with it, her sense of peace. One evening in early October, labor began. The sky was clear and pale. Martha Brennan arrived quickly, her steady hands guiding the long night that followed. Carrick never left Amelia's side. He wiped her brow. He whispered encouragement. He looked more frightened than she had ever seen him. Just before dawn, a strong cry filled the room. "A healthy boy," Martha declared, placing the baby against Amelia's chest. Carrick stared down at his son, as if the world had shifted beneath his feet. "He's perfect," he whispered. They named him James. In the weeks that followed, yet Carrick proved just as gentle with his child as he had been with his wife. He walked the floor at night when James cried. He changed diapers without complaint. He held the baby as if holding something sacred. "You are a natural," Amelia told him once. He shook his head with a soft smile. "No, I am just grateful." The ranch prospered that year more than any before. The schoolhouse opened with proper windows and desks. Amelia returned to teaching 1 day a week, bringing James with her. The children took turns rocking the cradle beside her desk. On their first wedding anniversary, snow fell lightly outside. The house glowed warm with candlelight. James slept upstairs while Carrick and Amelia sat before the fire. "A year ago," Amelia said quietly, "I stepped off a stagecoach in tears." Carrick looked at her with steady eyes. "And now?" "Now I cannot imagine another life." He reached for her hand. "You remember what you said to me that day?" she asked. "You don't have to pretend with me," he answered. She nodded. That was the moment everything changed, she said. No one had ever given me permission to simply be myself. Carrick brushed a strand of hair from her face. Best words I ever spoke, he said softly. Snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the ranch in silence. Inside, their son stirred gently in his cradle. The fire crackled. The walls of the home felt stronger somehow, built not just of timber and stone, but of honesty. The mail-order bride who had arrived in tears had found more than refuge. She had found respect, partnership, love. And the cowboy who had offered her simple understanding had found something greater than he had dared hope for. No pretending, just truth, and a life built strong upon it.